Now, yesterday we learned this idea that Taka, Hashem has created the world every single second. On the other hand, if we would see that Hashem is creating the world every single second, we become that power, we wouldn't exist. So it must be that A, Hashem creates the world every single second, B, we should not be able to see that Hashem is creating us every single second. V'hamashol lozeh. It's mamish a little bit past halfway on the page Ein Chesed Amud Aleph, Daf Ein Chesed Amud Aleph. V'hamashol, the illustration to demonstrate this point, that we couldn't afford to experience godliness, to experience our Dvar Havaya and exist. Ho'er Hashemesh. Take about the light of the sun. What do we know about the light of the sun? That it radiates on the earth and those who dwell upon it. Shahu. What light of the sun is radiating to the earth and those who dwell upon it? Ziv, a ray, and a light would radiates and expands from the body of the sun. It's visible to all of our eyes. It's radiating on the land, and the atmosphere of the earth. So this is the light that reaches us. It's self-understood. This light and this ray that exists down here must also exist in the body and in the physical material of the kadr, of the sphere, of the ball, of the globe, of the sun itself, Atzmei, which is up in the heavens, 93 million miles from the earth. And the proof is very simple. If the sun's rays can expand and radiate at a distance that's so huge, 93 million miles away, the sun has such an amazing impact. So certainly, it's able to radiate in its own location. If the sun's light can reach us, in the sun there has to be light of the sun as well. If you would visit the sun itself, and this is not advisable to do by yourself, this ray would be valued, which is absolutely nothingness. Why? It's nullified absolutely in relationship with the body of the globe, of the sphere of the sun itself. Why? Because since the sun itself is it's the root of this light and this ray. And this ray and this light is it's only an expansion of the light of the body and the essence of the sphere of the sun. So inside the sun there's also sunlight, but the sunlight into the sun is nothing. Nobody says, look up, you see, look, there's the sun and the sun's light. That's nonsensical. You see the sun, of course, if the sun is there, the light of the sun is there, but it's totally inconsequential. Nobody's going to say Yasher Koyach for pointing out the light of the sun and the sun. It's nothing. Like it's only that B'chalal ha'olam, in the emptiness, in the vacuousness, in the place where the sun is not, of the world, which is Tachas Kol HaShamayim, beneath the heavens, where the sun isn't, V'al ha'aretz, and on the earth, She'en kan guf, Kader Hashemesh b'metzias. We don't have the body of the sphere of the sun itself in its form down here. It's only up there. Therefore, nira kan, it seems to us that this light and this ray, leyesh mamish, as a self-contained, as a separate entity mamish, le'ein kel, to the eyes of everybody, and therefore, v'nei for the love kan shame yesh. We can employ about the sun's rays as they exist down here the denotation of yesh, an independent being, be'emes, in truth. Masha Enkin, as opposed to top of page 156 on Chesed Amud Beis. Now, Kishu b'Makedi, as it is in its root, b'guf Hashemish, in the body of the sun, a name for the law of Shem Yesh Klal. You can't call it by the name Yesh at all. Rak Sham over there, or Rak Shem Ayin v'Efes, absolutely nothingness. Ki be'emes, because to be sure, Hu Sham la'ayin v'Efes mamish, it's absolutely nothing. She'ein Mei Sham, what's expanded, what's revealed, what's functional, what's significant there is Rak Makedi Levade. It's only the root and the source alone. Shuguf Hashemesh HaMeir, it's only the body of the sun which radiates. Ve'efes below, then there's nothing besides for this. Now, many of it, Rabbi say, to talk about this mashal, I want to share with you a concept which is brought in Chassidus. When we talk about the mashal of Kader Hashemesh, Chassidus says at a certain point this mashal breaks down. It's not a good mashal for a Lamaila. Because the Lashon Chassidus says the Eir HaShemesh is made from the Shemesh behechrich. The sun doesn't have any choice whether the light of the sun should shine or not. And Lamaila, it's a Gilir Etzenis. So the mush only works to a certain extent. But I want to give you the mush of the Eir HaShemesh, assuming that the Shemesh is a Gilir Etzenis. In other words, I'm going to say something which is not true. The Maimorim actually are shakal v'tari in this nekuda. I've told in Samach Vov on page Reish Chav Hey, there's a pnima and a segraim which is pilpulling in this nekuda. It tells like this: there's two madregas of Eir HaShemesh and the Shemesh. The lower madrega is that the light of the sun and the sun is there. And faket, inside the sun, the light of the sun is even more concentrated than it is outside the sun. But it's insignificant compared to the sun. The higher madrega is that the light of the sun inside the sun is called lav in and and the light is not shining at all. The havana shabbat of it is that a moed, a source, is an etzem, and every etzem is chayshach, every etzem is dark. The etzem uvda that the moed is a meid is already a tzimtzum in the moed. So in other words, you have to look at the sun as being two madregas. The way the sun is dark, and the light of the sun is dark, lav in and then the way the sun goes through a tzimtzum in itself to be a mocha for Eira Meir, and then you could say that the Eira Shemesh is stronger in the sun than it is outside the sun. So when you're speaking about the bittul of the Eira Shemesh to the Shemesh, in the Mashal I don't know, but in the Nimshal there's two madregas. The lower madrega is that the light is there more, but it's ayin ve'efes, because it has no identity by itself. Shem ayin ve'efes. And the higher madrega is it's toshet not b'mitzias. Inside the sun there's no light of the sun. This is the Mashal. This is not so negate to now, but it'll be negate l'cheda to later in Shariach V'Emunah. Now, the Alter Rebbe is using this mashal to explain what? Varavaya. Hashem creates the world using words. These words have to be hidden from us, because if the words would be revealed to us, we would become nullified in those words as the light of the sun is in the sun. Now, understand that this mashal is imprecise. Why? Because the words of Hashem are not the sun. If the sun is the Eibishter, the words of Hashem are also the rays. If we would experience the rays of the sun, we would become those rays. We would stop being us. So Alter Rebbe is using a mashal, the Rvaile, which is mechuver only b'derech klal. The mashal serves our purposes. The light of the sun and the sun is nothing. The worlds and the Dvar Havaya is nothing. Even though Dvar Havaya is really a mashal for Eir HaShemesh and not for Shemesh itself. And that if we would experience the Eid Ein Sof, which is Mahava us, we would become the Eid Ein Sof. He nevertheless uses the mashal of Moed and Eid because B'Klolos the mashal works. Later on, this mashal has become more mechuva because we're going to speak higher madregis of achtas. The only achtas we're talking so far in Shariach V'Emunah is the word Lagabe the Dvar Hashem, which is only Malchus of Atzilus Achak. The words, Lagabe, the idea of Hisavas B'Chol Rega. Hisavas B'Chol Rega not from Atzmus, Hisavas B'Chol Rega from the Dvar Havaya. And even here, he uses the mashal of Eir HaShemesh. So I've just told you two pieces of information that are not negated. You didn't have to say them. Number one, in the scholars of Eir HaShemesh, Shemesh is two madregas. Number two, that the mashal of Shemesh and Eir for Dvar Havaya and Nevroyim is only correct B'Klolos. But Pratos, it's a much lower madrega. Later on, in the Shariach V'Emunah, this mashal is going to become truer because we're going to speak higher achtas. Not that we're batal agabe the Dvar Havaya, we're batal agabe the Eid Ein Sof, and we're called Batmusay because of Tzimtzum Shalei Kipshutei. When we go higher, the mashal is going to become more meaningful. You follow? You understand what I just said? Now let's continue. And like all of these words, B'dmusam Kitzalma, in their form and like their image. Now you translate Dmusa and Tzelem, and how come by Dmus he says base, and by Tzelem he says Chaf, and you'll be a genius. Hemkol Labroim, all the creations, Lagabi, when compared to Shefa Leki, the flow of divine light. Miruach, are you with us? Miruach, from the air of Hashem's mouth, Hashefei Yaleim, which is flowing upon them, and Mahavesim is creating them. Vumakedem, and the Shefa Leki is their root. And this is going on Dvar Havaya, the words of the Eibishter, which is Nitzav Hashamayim. That Vehematzma, they themselves Einam Rak are nothing more than K'me'er V'ziv Mispashet Men HaShefa V'ruach Havaya. The worlds are only like a light and a ray that is expanding from the flow and the air of Hashem's mouth. Hashafeh, which is flowing, Mislabishin is being revealed, B'teichem inside of themselves, Meitziam is bringing them into reality, Me'ayin, from a state of non-existence, Liyesh to a state of independent existence. So the Dvar Havaya would be the ayin, the creations would be the yesh, or the Shefa Laki would be the ayin, the Shefa Laki would be the sun, and the creations would be the light of the sun inside the sun. But therefore, the truth is, Haim, them, meaning us, the creation, B'Telem B'Matiyas is nullified in its source, in its form completely, L'Gabe Mekedem to their root. And their root is only the Dvar Havaya, Malchus of Atzilus, that K'mei HaShemesh, like the light of the sun, the way it is in the sun. Shabbatul b'mitzvah is nullified in its form. Inside the sun. V'nechshav l'ayim b'efes mamish is considered absolutely nothing mamish. inside the sun. And again, I told you there's two madreges in this. The lower madreges that over there, it's even stronger. And the higher madreges at Lavin and Nehedin. You cannot identify the light as being a self-contained entity whatsoever. In its root. Only underneath the heavens. Where there is no source, therefore the light becomes a Matthias. Same is true of all of us. That you cannot use regarding the creation, meaning us, the word yesh whatsoever, to our eyes of the flesh. Why to our eyes of the flesh are we yesh? It's very simple. We don't see, we don't intellectually reach as hamakar, our root. And our root doesn't mean atzmus, our root means the dvar havaya, and the air of his mouth which is creating us. And it is because Hashem hides the truth of the Dvar Havaya from us, it appears to us that Gashmias and Avrayim v'chumram, the material creations and their baseness, umamasham and their substance, Shem Yesh Gam, as though they're independent absolutely, as it appears, Eid Hashem Yesh Gam, the light of the sun being a total Yesh, a totally independent being. Now you should know this Abisal Shver, because Eid is Gili of Makar. And Ayin is Helam of Makar. Yesh is a Helam of Makar. So when we look at us, we don't see the Eibishter. It's true. You look at the light of the sun, you don't see the sun. You know it comes from the sun, but he calls it Yesh Gomer, because it's not in its root. This is it. However, until now we gave a mashal which is true only b'derech klal. In general, the sun's light in the sun itself is bottle. The world, the Dvar Havaya, is bottle. Why are we separate? Because we don't see our own source. Now the Alter Rebbe says let's get complicated. However, in this prat, the analogy and what it is analogous for are not exactly the same completely. You can't compare them completely. Why? In the mashal, the sun is up there and the light of the sun is down here. The root is not at all existent in the space of the world. And on the earth, Shanira Sham Eide, where the light is visible, Yesh Gama as a thing which is completely independent, is because the sun is mamish, not here. Right? That's how it is in the Mashal. Mashenkein, as opposed to in the Nimshal. And the Nimshal has several levels. The lowest level of the Nimshal will be the Dvar Havaya and the Nevroim. Kalabroim, all the creations have been Mekedem, they're constantly in the root. It is only Sheina Maka Nidal Eini Basa. You cannot see how the root is present. So here goes already the beginning of the difference in the mashal and the nimshal. In the mashal, the sun's light can only be a mitzvah separate from the sun. In the nimshal, there's a concept called tzimtzum shleikib shetei. Hashem could be here, but by Hashem preventing us from seeing Him, we could be. Right? And in this itself, there's madreges. The madrege we learned so far is the Dvar Havaya is right here, and we're not experiencing the Dvar Havaya. So it's not that the Dvar Havaya is over there and we're over here. The Dvar Havaya is in us, like the shemesh. And we're experiencing ourselves because we're not experiencing the Dvar Havaya. And then you're going to go extrapolate backwards higher and higher in this idea of Shalei Kipshut. So the marshal of the Shemesh, Neira Shemesh, is the light of the sun is felt because the sun isn't here. In the Nimshal, the Leibish, the Dvar Havaya is here, we just don't feel it, so we seem separate from Him. To understand how could it be if the Dvar Hashem is here and we don't become bottle, how could that be? This requires a Agdama of the whole idea of Tzimtzumim, which we'll do a mitzvah tomorrow.